I wanted to believe her. God help me, I really did. We were sitting across from each other at this quiet little Italian place she used to love. Dim lighting, soft jazz in the background, and the smell of garlic and white wine floating in the air. She had picked the spot, said it reminded her of simpler times. I took that as a good sign. She even wore the blue dress I once told her made her look like summer. I hadn't seen her wear it in over a year. She smiled too much. That was the first red flag. I'd been trying to make sense of things ever since I found those messages 4 months ago. The ones she swore were just emotional venting with a friend. That friend had signed off with a heart emoji and called her beautiful disaster. Not something your average coworker sends. I was ready to walk then, but she cried, said it meant nothing, said she'd end it. Swore on everything she could. She even suggested therapy. I went. I sat in those chairs and spilled out pieces of myself like change from a broken wallet. She barely looked up half the time. But tonight was supposed to be different. Her idea. She said she wanted to rebuild. Start over. I laughed, told her trust isn't something you just rebuild like IKEA furniture. But I agreed. Because somewhere deep down, the part of me that still remembered the way she'd once reached for my hand in crowded rooms, that part still wanted her. The waiter brought out a bottle of wine. Her favorite. She raised her glass and said, "To second chances." I looked at her, studied her eyes. She looked back without blinking. We toasted, and for a few minutes I let myself forget the past. But then I saw it. When she reached down to adjust her purse strap, something fell out onto the hardwood floor. A small white envelope. Unmarked. She hadn't noticed it. Too busy telling me about some podcast she was obsessed with lately. But I had. I reached down, picked it up slowly, almost like I was afraid of what I'd find. It was sealed. Crisp. Clean. I didn't open it. I didn't have to. I just looked at it for a beat too long. Then I looked up at her. Still smiling. Still talking. Still acting. I caught the waiter's eye. A young guy, maybe college age. He was clearing the next table over. I nodded slightly, handed him the envelope. "Could you give this to her?" I asked quietly. He raised an eyebrow, then turned and placed it right in front of her plate, like another course. She stopped mid-sentence. Blinked. Her smile froze. She looked down, then back at me. "What's this?" she asked. I shrugged. She slowly picked it up, eyes flicking over it. Her fingers hesitated at the seal. She looked around, suddenly aware of how quiet the restaurant had become. I could feel the tension rising like heat from a stove. Other couples had turned their heads slightly, sensing drama the way sharks sense blood. She opened it, and whatever expression she was wearing melted away. Her lips parted just a fraction. Her breath caught. Then her hands clenched, ever so slightly, as she folded the note back up. I didn't say a word. I just watched. I watched her try to decide how to play it. She glanced at me again, searching my face for clues. Did I know? Did I see? Was this some kind of trap? She tried to smile again, but it trembled. Where did you get this?" she asked. I didn't answer. Instead, I leaned back in my chair and sipped my wine. Not a word. Just silence. That was the moment it started unraveling. She reached for her purse, but her hands were shaking. She tucked the note away quickly, as if hiding it would erase what just happened. But the damage was done. Her voice cracked when she tried to ask about dessert. I said I wasn't hungry. I wasn't. I was watching a performance crumble in real time. And what made it worse, what made it cruel, maybe, was that I knew something she didn't. I had put the note in her purse myself. But not just any note. No threats. No confrontation. Just 10 words, carefully written in the handwriting she used to call beautiful. "You said trust you again." So I tested that trust. That was it. I didn't want to argue anymore. Didn't want another apology shaped like manipulation. I just wanted to see what she would do. And she had failed the test without even realizing it was one. Now she sat across from me, trying to hold together whatever mask she thought still worked. But the truth? The truth was already in her hands. And the room had gotten a little too quiet. She didn't touch her wine after that. I watched her stare at the folded note like it was some cursed object. She ran her thumb over the crease, eyes darting back and forth between me and the table, as if hoping one of us would say something to fill the silence. But I didn't. I just let her sit in it. She cleared her throat. Finally. Where did this come from, really? Her voice was quieter now, like she was testing if I would react to softness. That tone used to work on me. It used to make me lean forward and forgive before I even knew what I was forgiving. But not anymore. I tilted my head slightly. Does it matter? She blinked again. Of course it matters. You handed it to the waiter like it was nothing. She let out a short, awkward laugh, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. Are we doing some kind of scavenger hunt now? That made me smile. Just a little. Not out of humor, more like admiration. She was fast, quick to spin. When backed into a corner, she didn't confess. She created fog. I used to mistake that fog for complexity. I used to think she was just deep, emotional, conflicted. Now I saw it for what it was. Deflection. She picked up her fork, then set it down. Picked up her wine, put it back. Her fingers were fidgeting with the edge of the napkin like she needed something, anything, to anchor her. I finally spoke. You said you wanted to rebuild trust. She straightened in her chair. I do. Good. I nodded slowly. Then tell me, what's in the note? Her lips parted, but no sound came out. That shouldn't be hard if we're being honest, I added. She exhaled, long and shaky. It's just a note. It doesn't mean anything. It was probably, she paused, chewing on her words. Probably something old. Something I forgot was even there. You haven't changed your purse in 3 months? I asked. I have. Of course I have, it's just. She stopped. The couple behind us got up to leave. The man looked at me, then her, then back at me and gave me a subtle nod. I wasn't sure what it meant. Solidarity? Pity? Entertainment? I didn't care. This wasn't for them. This wasn't for anyone. She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. Are you trying to punish me? No, I replied calmly. I'm just asking if you're being honest. You think I'm lying? Her tone rose just enough to catch the attention of the waitress stacking plates across the room. She noticed it too, and quickly reeled it back in. Look, I know I messed up. I've said that. I'm here now trying. Why would I sabotage that? I shrugged. That's the question, isn't it? She stared at me, and for the first time that evening, her eyes weren't playing a part. They weren't trying to be soft or sweet. They were searching, desperate, angry, maybe even scared. I let that silence stretch again. I wasn't trying to be cruel, truly, but I'd spent months inside my own head, gaslighting myself, trying to believe half-truths and excuses because I didn't want to face the alternative. I clung to hope the way a drowning man clings to driftwood, forgetting that hope, too, can sink you if it's rotten. So I needed this moment. I needed to see if she could look me in the eye and tell the truth. Not for her. For me. She finally said, it was from a friend, an old friend, before we agreed to start over. I forgot it was in there. I nodded slowly. Okay. Okay? She repeated. I stood up. She looked up at me, confused. Where are you going? I'm just going to pay, I said. Then I think we're done for tonight. But I thought this was supposed to be a new beginning. I looked at her, really looked at her, and it hit me then just how far we drifted. Not just because of what she did, but because of what it turned me into. I wasn't the man who used to write her poems, or surprise her with flowers, or warm her feet under the covers at night. I was someone else now, and I didn't want to be that man anymore. I needed to know if the words matched the actions. I said. She blinked. And now I do. With that, I walked past the table, past the half-eaten breadsticks and untouched wine, and made my way to the counter. I paid in cash. No drama. No final monologue. Just a quiet exit. When I turned back once more, she was still sitting there, the envelope now tucked into her lap, her eyes following me, her face pale and unreadable. I didn't stop walking. What she never realized was this. I didn't leave because she lied again. I left because I finally believed myself. I doubted my instincts for too long. That note? It was a mirror. And tonight, she finally looked in it. I didn't go home that night. Not because I needed space. I'd had enough of that to build a mansion around my broken trust. But because I wanted to sit with the silence and finally hear myself think. I drove around the city for a while, windows down, letting the night air scrape through my thoughts like sandpaper. It wasn't dramatic or cinematic. I didn't cry. I didn't scream into the void. I just breathed. For the first time in a long time, I breathed without waiting for the next betrayal to knock the wind out of me. Around midnight, I ended up at the all-night diner on the east side. The kind of place where the coffee is cheap, the booths are cracked, and the waitresses call you Han, no matter how tired you look. I slid into a corner booth and ordered a black coffee and a slice of pie I didn't really want. Across from me sat nobody, and for once that felt like a gift. I replayed everything in my head. Not just that night, but the year before. The slow erosion. The nights she came home late with vague explanations. The way she flinched when I reached for her phone. How her laugh started sounding like it belonged to someone else. How she stopped looking me in the eye during conversations. And how I started filling in the blanks with hope because I didn't want to be the jealous husband. But it wasn't jealousy. It was intuition. And I'd buried it under excuses because it was easier to question myself than accept that the woman I once trusted with my whole life could treat my heart like a backup plan. The waitress refilled my coffee without asking. I nodded in thanks. She looked like she'd seen hundreds of broken people at 1 a.m., and I was just another face in her night shift. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through old photos. Us in Rome, standing in front of the Trevi Fountain, her hair tied back, smiling like she actually meant it. Us on the couch with our dog between us, fighting for space like 3 kids instead of 2 adults. A video of her laughing when I burned the pancakes. For a second, it almost fooled me into believing it had all been real. But memories are just curated snapshots. They don't show the cracks. They don't whisper the late-night doubts. They don't capture the gut feeling when you see a message light up her phone and she flips it over, face down. I opened the Notes app. I started typing without knowing where it would go. You lied to me. You kept lying even after I gave you the chance to stop. You said you needed time to heal, but you were still bleeding on me the whole time. I carried wounds I didn't cause, and I let you tell me it was my fault for noticing. I stared at the words for a long time. Then I deleted them. She wouldn't read them anyway, and if she did, she'd find a way to turn them into something about her pain, her confusion, her journey. I was done being a character in her redemption arc. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to destroy her. I just didn't want her to hold the pen anymore. I paid for the coffee and left a tip that was too big. Felt like I owed the world something, even if I didn't know what. Driving home, the streets were empty. No traffic, no honking, just the quiet hum of tires on asphalt and the occasional flicker of a streetlight. I rolled the window up and turned off the radio. Silence again, but this time it didn't feel lonely. I got home around 2:30 a.m. The house was dark. I hadn't told her I wasn't coming back. I didn't feel like explaining. I walked inside, past the framed photos on the wall, portraits of a couple who looked like strangers now, and went straight to the bedroom. She wasn't there. Her side of the bed was still made. I stood there for a second, unsure what that meant. Had she left? Was she trying to make me chase her? Was she expecting me to come crawling back in the morning with some guilt-soaked apology? I didn't care. I sat down on my side of the bed and pulled out the drawer. Inside was the small notebook I kept tucked away. The one I used to write in when I didn't have anyone to talk to. I flipped it open and scribbled a single sentence. She failed the test, but I finally passed mine. I closed it and lay back on the bed, fully clothed. I didn't sleep much, but it was enough. Morning came with no messages, no missed calls, just light leaking in through the curtains like an indifferent reminder that life keeps moving whether you're ready or not. Around 9 a.m., I heard the front door open. She stepped in quietly. No keys rattling, no heels clicking. Just soft, calculated footsteps. She was testing the air, checking if the storm had passed. I didn't move. She walked into the room like someone entering a hospital room. Eyes cautious, voice soft. "Hey!" I said nothing. She tried again. "I didn't sleep. I went to Amanda's. I needed time." Still, I didn't respond. I was done giving her my voice when she only ever used hers to manipulate. She moved to the edge of the bed. "Can we talk?" That's when I finally looked at her. Not with anger. Not with pain. Just a quiet, calm distance. The kind you give to people who have proven they don't deserve closeness. "I think you already said enough," I said. She sat down, eyes wide. "I'm sorry. I really am." Panicked. I thought maybe you planted the note." I raised an eyebrow. She hesitated. "Did you?" I didn't answer. That silence? That was mine now. She started to cry then. Real tears, or at least very convincing ones. Her hands trembled. I thought we were moving forward." I stood up, walked to the dresser, and pulled out a small bag. I packed it the night before. Not with clothes. Just the essentials. Toothbrush. Notebook. Peace. I said, slinging the strap over my shoulder. She stood too. "Wait, you're leaving?" "No," I said quietly. "I left already. Last night. You just hadn't noticed." And I walked past her. No slamming doors. No dramatic exits. Just the sound of footsteps finally walking toward something honest. I didn't have a destination when I left the house that morning. There was no grand plan. No rented apartment waiting. No friend's couch offered as a soft landing. All I knew was I couldn't stay. Not in that house. Not in those memories. Not in a bed where I'd once traced her spine with my fingers while whispering promises we both broke in different ways. So I drove. South at first, then west. The highway didn't care where I was going, and that felt comforting. There's something freeing about movement with no goal, just distance. I ended up in a small coastal town a few hours away, one of those quiet places that survives on tourist money in the summer and stories in the winter. I parked near a marina and sat watching the boats bob up and down like they had somewhere to be. I envied them. My phone buzzed for the first time in hours. A message from her. "Please talk to me. Please." No punctuation beyond that. It struck me that even in desperation, she hadn't said what she wanted to talk about. Not the note. Not the lie. Not even me. Just a vague request for my attention. I turned the phone off. There's a kind of peace that comes when you realize you're no longer someone's safety net. When their panic no longer controls your next move. I'd spent so long trying to prevent the fall, wrapping us both in layers of forced forgiveness and hesitant affection. But the fall had already happened. I just hadn't noticed we were already lying on the ground, pretending the pain was just part of working through it. That afternoon, I checked into a small inn that smelled like old books and sea salt. The woman at the counter asked if I was here for business or just needing a breather. I almost laughed. I said, "The second one." She nodded like she'd seen my type before. I guess heartbreak has a posture, a scent, a silence. I took a long walk along the beach as the sun dipped low, dragging gold across the waves like paint on canvas. I saw a couple walking hand in hand. They looked young, carefree. She leaned her head on his shoulder, and he smiled like nothing in the world had ever gone wrong. It should have made me bitter, but it didn't. It just reminded me of who I used to be. The man I was before suspicion began to eat me alive. That night I finally slept. Not perfectly, but without dreams. And for me, that was progress. When I woke the next morning, I found 3 more texts from her, each one a little more desperate than the last. The final one read, "Just tell me if it's really over. No anger. Just that." I sat with the message for a long time. The truth was, it had been over long before she realized it. It ended not with the affair, but with the erosion. With the way she stopped showing up emotionally. With the way my laughter stopped making her look up. With the way she started talking to someone else in the tone she used to save for me. The note in her purse? That was just the punchline to a joke that had been going on behind my back for months. And I'd been the setup. Later that day, I stopped by a bookstore cafe and sat with a notebook again. I needed to write, Not for her, not even for an audience, but for myself. I scribbled down everything I'd held in. The resentment, the regrets, the things I forgave too quickly, and the ones I never should have accepted. I wrote about how love becomes control when it's not built on truth. How second chances feel like charity when the first one was never honored. I wrote about the difference between forgiving someone and forgetting who they really are. I stayed there for hours, just writing, just breathing. Eventually, I called my brother. We hadn't talked much in the last year. He never really liked her. Not out of jealousy or dislike, but because he saw what I couldn't. He answered on the second ring. "You all right?" he asked immediately. "I'm getting there," I said. "You need a place?" he offered. "Not yet," I replied. "But maybe soon." He didn't press. Just said, "I've got beer and a pull-out couch. You're welcome anytime." It felt good to know someone would make space for me without needing a full explanation. Without twisting the narrative to fit their needs. That's something she never did. Every conversation with her came with conditions. Hidden meanings, redefinitions of truth that left me dizzy. The following day, I returned to the marina and watched a man teach his daughter how to untie a small boat. She laughed when the rope slipped through her fingers, and he crouched to help, patience in every movement. That image stayed with me. I realized I wanted that one day. Not the boat, not even the family, but the clarity, the honesty, the gentleness that comes when you don't have to question someone's motives every time they reach for you. And I knew I'd never get that with her. That night, she called. I didn't answer. The next morning, she sent a voice message. I played it once. "I don't know how to undo this. I don't even know where to start. I didn't mean to fall for someone else. I just felt invisible. And he noticed me when you stopped. I know that's not an excuse. I miss you. I miss us. Please, don't let this be how we end." I deleted the message without saving it. Because she didn't miss me. She missed the version of me that made her feel good about herself. The one who forgave, who overlooked, who let her mistakes sit on my chest while she called them growing pains. She missed the role I played, not the person I was. And I wouldn't go back to playing the fool. Later that night, I packed up my bag, checked out of the inn, and got back on the road. This time, I wasn't just escaping. I was choosing me, choosing clarity over confusion, peace over chaos, truth over performance. It wasn't a dramatic turning point. No music swelling in the background. Just the soft thump of my heart finally beating without fear. And as I drove, for the first time in what felt like years, I smiled. I'd stayed with my brother for a few days after leaving the coastal town. His couch was too short, his dog shed everywhere, and the guest blanket smelled faintly like old pizza. But none of that mattered. Felt real. Honest. No pretense. Just me, healing. Surrounded by someone who didn't need me to explain every crack in the foundation I'd been forced to walk away from. In those first days, I rebuilt the simplest parts of myself. I woke up early. I made breakfast. I sat outside with coffee and watched the light crawl across the fence. I didn't check my phone for her messages. I didn't refresh her social media. I didn't ask mutual friends for updates. For once, I wasn't feeding my curiosity with pain. I was learning how to let stillness speak louder than questions. One evening, my brother and I sat on the back porch, watching the smoke rise from the grill. He handed me a beer and didn't say a word for 10 minutes straight, which in our family counted as deep conversation. Finally, he asked, "So what now?" I shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe I start over. Somewhere new. Maybe. Somewhere that doesn't look like her." He nodded slowly. "That's fair." He didn't tell me to forgive. Didn't tell me I should try again or move past it. He didn't suggest therapy or meditation or journaling. He just let me sit in it. And that, I realized, was the most healing thing anyone had done for me in months. A few days later, I got a letter. Not a text. Not an email. A physical, handwritten letter in an envelope with my name on it in her script. I recognized it instantly. The same script from birthday cards, from grocery lists left on the fridge, from love notes tucked under my pillow once upon a time. I didn't open it right away. I let it sit on the coffee table for a full day. Just sat there. This sealed white rectangle containing words I wasn't sure I wanted to hear. Eventually, curiosity won. Not because I was hoping to find redemption inside, but because I needed to know where she stood when I had already walked away. The letter was long. 3 pages. She didn't beg. She didn't scream. She didn't try to rewrite the past. Instead, she wrote something I hadn't expected. Acceptance. She admitted that she hadn't been honest, not just with me, but with herself. She said she'd wanted to be someone better, but that she kept reaching for validation in the wrong places. That when things got quiet between us, she panicked. She thought love meant constant fire, not steady warmth. So she sought sparks, and those sparks burned everything down. She wrote, "I know you put that note in my purse. I knew it the second I read it. That's why I couldn't speak. Because I knew in that moment you weren't testing me. You were showing me what you already knew. And I failed. Again." There were apologies after that. Not for the affair, though she mentioned it, but for making me feel like I had to question myself for so long. For twisting love into a tightrope act where I always had to prove I was worthy of being trusted, while she offered no safety net of her own. At the end, she wrote, "I won't ask you to come back. I just needed to tell you that I see it now. All of it. And I hope, someday, someone loves you in the way I should have. I hope you let them." I folded the letter and put it in the drawer beside my bed. Not to reread, just to honor it. Because closure isn't always about conversation, it's about recognition. And for once, she saw me. Maybe too late, but still. Weeks turned into months. I moved out of state, found a new place with wide windows and quiet neighbors. I started writing again. This time not in notebooks filled with anger, but with hope. Not every day was perfect. Some mornings I still woke up expecting the ache to be louder. But most days it wasn't. Most days it was quiet. And that quiet had become sacred. I went on a few dates. Nothing serious. Just coffee, some shared stories, a little laughter. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to impress. I didn't perform. I just showed up as I was. Bruised but breathing, unsure but honest. One Sunday morning, I found myself back at a small cafe. The kind with sunlight that cuts across the table and music soft enough to think through. The waitress handed me my coffee and smiled. "You look like you've got stories," she said casually. "Maybe," I replied, smiling faintly. "But I'm learning to write new ones." She laughed and walked away, and I sat there for a long moment, letting the warmth of the mug soak into my hands. Outside the window, 2 kids were blowing bubbles into the breeze. A dog barked somewhere. A church bell rang in the distance, and I realized something important. Peace doesn't come in the form of justice. It doesn't always come with a dramatic confrontation or a perfect goodbye. Sometimes, peace arrives in the absence, in the quiet after the storm, in the way your shoulders slowly remember how to relax, in the breath that no longer gets caught in your chest when someone says her name. I paid my bill, left a tip, and walked out into the day without checking my phone. Because I didn't need to anymore. Whatever came next, whatever new chapter waited around the corner, it would be mine. Not built on lies or fear or half-love masked as devotion, but on something real, something quiet, something honest. And to the ones who've ever been handed silence in place of an apology, who've ever walked away carrying the weight of someone else's betrayal, this is for you. You are not the lie they told. You are not the wound they left. You are the story that begins after the final page of theirs is turned. And that story is worth telling. If this story moved you or reminded you of your own journey, don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your story too. We're stronger when we share.